I'm Sawyer, and you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
Hey everybody, listen up. I'm so excited because I get to say welcome back to our house today because Zach is away. And much to your chagrin, it is not just going to be me all alone talking to me and myself and you, as I'm sure you have hoped would happen. But I'm actually excited because something is happening today that I have been looking forward to for a long time, and we're going to get to that. But first, I want to do one really quick plug announcement of something that we have coming up. So, ladies, this is for you, not this entire podcast, but this right now is for you. And that is we have a really great ladies event coming up on Saturday, October 26th. We've been sharing about it on the His Providence Church Instagram feed and at church on Sunday mornings, but I want to make sure that just our House listeners are also included in that. Saturday, October 26th, we have a really great simulcast that's going to be happening here. Beth Moore is going to be the lead Bible teacher for that day. Ladies from all over come out for these simulcasts, and we have lunch together, we worship together, we listen to the word together, and it's kind of just a gigantic ladies Bible study. So it's really cool. You can sign up for that at hpc.church/events, and we look forward to seeing you there. So that's my quick plug for that. Next up, I'm excited because today, actually, since we started this podcast, I have always wanted to do an episode that was like called Church Ladies.
Well, isn't that special?
And I envisioned just like a handful of friends, Christian mom friends, Christian friends kind of like coming in and just talking church stuff or parenting or just all like the mom stuff that we deal with. Sometimes it's, a little bit different when it's me and Zach, and it's fun and it's crazy and all of that and two different perspectives. But I kind of wanted everybody to hear a little bit from other church ladies. So I'm very excited to welcome two of my great friends today to the Our House podcast. I have Lori and Kim with me today. So they're going to take like 2 seconds and just, if you guys could say maybe like how many kids you have and I don't know, something fun about yourself that people might not know. A lot of people already know you because both of them are on church staff. Both of them have been Christians their whole lives. But I think there's always things about you that people like wonder or don't know about you. So something like fun or funny that like, unless people were like really friends with you, they wouldn't know about you.
Oh boy.
I don't know which one of you wants to.
Hard.
Which one of you wants to brave that first?
Okay, well, how many kids is easy.
That's Lori. All right, Lori.
This is Lori. Hi. So we have 4 kids. Our youngest is 6. Our oldest is about to be 12. So we've got a good range of lots of different stages.
And first year going into middle school.
You're
You're now a middle school mom.
That's crazy.
That's
Doesn't
crazy.
feel like that should be a thing.
Yeah.
Feels like, aren't I too young to have a middle schooler?
The answer is
Isn't
always
he
yes.
still a baby?
The answer is
how
always
this
yes.
happening?
And aren't I too young? Yes.
Always. Oh man, something interesting about me. I don't know.
I would say this one thing about you while you're thinking. Lori is famously known for her peace-making abilities. And not peacekeeping, peacemaking. And I think it's so funny because your shirt actually says peace today.
I am wearing
which
a big
is fantastic.
peace shirt. That's great.
And Lori grew up in a family of a lot of kids.
Yep.
And homeschooled. Mm-hmm. You were homeschooled like the entire way through.
Pretty much,
until you went to college. You went to a private Bible college.
Yep.
But
so yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of dynamic.
Yeah,
there.
For sure.
Yep.
For sure. I think that's probably like the biggest thing about like what motivates me is that kind of peacemaking thing. And so that's been fun growing up in a big family, now having my own pretty big family, and then being on a church staff to like how does that all work here? So yeah, that's been awesome. Something random and fun is I actually play the guitar, not well, but that's something that not a lot of people know about me.
She does. And you're actually a really good singer, and nobody ever knows that either.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Coming from you, I'm like, come on.
Oh, please. Lori's actually a great singer.
I like being behind the scenes, but every once in a while I like kind of just having that other creative outlet.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
Nice.
And I always tell Lori, I'm like, if you weren't so busy on Sunday mornings, I wish you would be on stage singing because you're so good. And that'd be so fun. But maybe another season of life.
I know, right?
All right, up next.
All right, this is Kim.
And I'm trying to think of how many kids I have. I think it's 7. No, I'm just kidding.
Depends on who's living in the house this week.
No, we have 7 kids, ages 8 months to 17. So we have one that just started daycare and one that's a senior in high school
That's-
and in between.
wow, fantastic.
So we'll have 2 in elementary school this year, 2 in middle school, 2 in high school. So it's a very crazy season
Wowza.
of all different ages and processing all different things.
That is a lot to process.
It's a lot.
That's
Yeah.
a lot to process.
Yep.
I think right now we have 1 elementary, 2 middle school, and 1 high school. And I feel like that's all the different dates, the stuff, the times, the
Emotions,
needs,
the emotions.
all of it. The emotions. It's a lot. It's a lot. All right, tell us one fun thing about yourself that people wouldn't know.
I'm sure my friends know.
Are you playing the guitar at home?
I'm not playing the guitar. I might go get Lori a guitar for this podcast, but I'm sure my friends know this, but I think my favorite thing is shopping. I love shopping.
That is an
John
understatement.
teases that I don't have hobbies, but I do have a hobby. I like shopping. I don't have to be buying. I'm just very, very happy to be walking around any sort of mall, outdoor mall, store. I love to just wander and shop.
The experience? Is it just the experience of it, or do you have to purchase for
No.
it to like be fulfilled?
No, I don't have to purchase. I just love I don't know if it's a mindless thing, if it's like I can just
Think
like
about
wander and
Do you do online shopping too? Like I have like every single store I ever go to, I have like
Yeah.
carts that I
The
don't
cart-
actually check
yeah.
out.
Absolutely.
I don't
I definitely
actually
have that.
I don't actually love online shopping. I feel like it's not the same like tangible items. You can't see the quality.
Yep.
I don't think I like online as much, but there's a few stores that I really do like to online shop. But most of the time I just like the experience of walking around the mall.
But you're a fashionista, and Kim has always had that skill. She usually buys our shoes for Christmas gifts every year. Anytime there's like a new staff member, she's like, "What I'm going to do for them is buy them a new pair of shoes." And one thing you don't know about Kim is that she, when we were young, one of her things that she really wanted was a pair of white go-go boots. And so since then, she...
Is this how this podcast is going to go?
white go-go boots, and you'd hike that jean skirt up and you'd put on those white go-go.
They're in style. They're actually back in style. I saw them in a store last week and I pointed them out to John and I said, when someone brings up the white go-go boots, I want you to remember this pair. They're right here.
In style.
They're here.
Yeah, they're back. All of it's back. So you didn't have to go far. Time to pull it back out of the closet. But so a couple of things that I wanted to hit on the podcast today with you all. And I have a feeling it's going to just go anywhere and everywhere. But I don't really want it to be too heavy. I just kind of want to like have fun. And as we are getting ready to start school again, so you guys are going to listen to this podcast on Friday. And then for us, I think all of our kids start school next Wednesday, September 4th. Looking on Instagram, it seems like everybody else around the country has already started.
It's crazy. All the back to school pictures. It's like
Yeah, and do you know what I'm doing? I am soaking up those wins with my kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, can you look at these poor children? They've already been
terrible.
in school for several days while you're lounging around the house. Aren't you so lucky? Oh my gosh. So I'll milk that as long
I don't know.
as I can.
I actually told you I had the opposite perspective yesterday because I pulled home from work into my driveway and we have an in-ground pool, but no. Our kids are in a kiddie pool in my driveway with
For all the neighbors to see.
Hold on. Just not a kiddie pool.
Oh, no.
All of our winter sleds out being used with the kiddie pool.
Ouchie.
And hoses everywhere, water everywhere. And so I said, clean up all this stuff in the driveway. We can't even park in the driveway because there's an entire winter and summer brigade happening in our driveway. I went inside, I ran upstairs, and I came downstairs, and there was a full outdoor large family tent set up in our entire living room.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not only that, they
no.
packed coolers for the tent. Coolers were full of things for the tent.
For a camp out.
And I
inside.
looked at those pictures of those children back at
guess-
school. And I
Why
thought,
not me?
why are we still home? Why are we in pools? Why are we in
does this
tents?
summer never end? Yeah. And then Lori, why don't you tell us about how good of a mom you are?
Oh, am I?
You're so good. You treasure every moment. You're so good.
I definitely have had my moments where starting soccer Today actually starts soccer for our kids.
Oh, really?
And
How many kids do you have playing?
all 4.
Wow.
Not willingly.
Oh,
But
my-
here's the deal. When you have a big family, they do these things called like family caps where like each individual kid would be like $80 or whatever. But for a family, it's only $200. So I said, guess what? You're all doing soccer.
Oh,
Buy 1 to 2.5, get
Yay!
one free.
Don't you love soccer?
Yep. So last night it was like try on the cleats and the socks and everything like that. But my middle schooler, this is just really, we're just in a really fun stage of like testing limits and everything is like the end of the world.
Nice.
So now my husband's trying to bribe him to like
play?
have a good attitude. Like
You didn't
you
want
can
to,
have
like, you can't make me.
prime bottle, the prime, like the it's like Gatorade, but not.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
have
yeah.
a prime for every game that you play with a good attitude.
Oh my gosh,
So
that's
this
so
maybe we're
funny.
not like I do good things. We make the back to school friendship bracelets so everyone gets to pick out their colors. And I was doing that with the kids yesterday.
Oh, that's so funny.
But then
You're so
we have our
good.
wins, we have our losses. So we'll just take what we can get.
We sure do. We sure do. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Do you have either of you have anything that you would say is a like large family, maybe like back to school hack or like mom hack that you would say helps get all of, I don't know, just makes it a little bit easier. Because when you start going back to school, I mean, it's like, it feels like utter chaos going into it because you are getting school supply lists. It's the school clothes shopping. It's lunch boxes. It's backpacks. It's haircuts. It's the shoes. Good Lord, the shoes. And then it seems like you're trying to pull stuff out because you're wondering what they're actually going to wear this coming fall. And do you have it? You're drowning in like still wet beach towels and all of that. And then there's the forms. It's like a million ahead of time permission forms to leave campus, to have whatever. I'm going to participate in this thing, signing handbooks, all that stuff. What?
Shoot, we didn't do that form.
Oh, I did it.
Oh,
shoot.
no.
I think I did it.
No, the form. Ashley and I were on the naughty
Did
list.
I do
for the
have-
forms?
I think I did it.
Yeah, we got to do that.
Oh,
I
man.
think I did do it, yeah. Any hack that you would say, and it doesn't have to be around that in particular, but what would you say, like, in order to function? Think about how many times people are like, how do you do it with all these things? You're like, I don't know. I'm kind of just walking in like a fog all the time. And things are happening. I don't know they're happening, but it's getting done. Anything that you would say is like lunch packing hack or something that you're like, man, I'm really glad I figured this out.
I pull all the kids' clothes and pack lunches the night before. So no one in
Game
my family is
changer.
a morning
Same.
person.
Game
We
changer.
are all like struggle in the morning. So as much as I can do the night before, even when we get home at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I just want to go curl up in bed and read a book or watch a show. I'm like, be disciplined.
lunches.
Do the thing.
Yes.
Pack the lunches.
Get
Make
the
sure
lunches
everyone has the
packed.
right uniforms that they need. But all this back to school prep, I am like an avid to-do lister.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm not a type A person. So I just have like 100 to-do lists and then I don't know which one was the right one. So I just make a new one. And so I get like the rush of everything that needs to happen when I'm trying to fall asleep at night. So I just get on my phone, to-do list for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And like tomorrow the next day, making just on my phone in like the notes app with the little buttons that you tick things off when they're done. And that's how I'm surviving back to school and actually getting some sleep at night and not just like feeling the rush of anxiety and stress of like everything.
I mean, you got to say, everybody knows the phone, like you have to, I know people frown on having the phone next to your bed at night, but here's the deal. I need it for emergencies. All the times I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, in order for me to go back to sleep, I have to get this off my brain.
Yep.
So it's not like swirling around in there, just saying like, if you fall asleep again, you're going to forget this and you're not going to
Yep.
do it. I need to have that to like constantly just like jot random things down in
Yeah.
the middle of the night.
Yep. And like I'll do a paper note.
Yeah.
The
No,
paper
I'm
note is
doing it.
gone. It's
No.
done when I clean
Done.
off my
Just
nightstand
forget
in the
it.
morning.
Well,
Gone.
I'll tell you what, I tried doing the paper note and then I fold it up and I stick it in the back pocket.
Yep.
And that's it. I never even see it again because I forget about it or it falls out or it goes in the wash.
Yep.
And so, no, I'm going to say the phone notes.
Digital notes.
And I have the little check boxes.
Yep.
Yes. All right,
Right.
Kim.
Very accomplished.
What do you have for us? Mom hack, 7 kids.
7 kids, I would say I may look like we're not organized, but we actually are very organized. And I have to stay way, way, way ahead of things. So
I imagine so.
just to do the lunches and the things on a daily basis, the other pieces have to be done. So like right now, everybody's clothes are all in my room, all in order by age.
Oh, here's a fun thing
Everything's-
people don't know about you.
Yeah.
You're an ironer. I'm guessing that's why those clothes are in your room, because you get to iron. You love to iron
Yes.
clothes.
So all the names are in the clothes, and then
I
everything's
haven't done that
ironed.
yet. Yeah.
So that's my trick. Everything's ironed. I have everything all lined up and ironed and ready to go. And
That doesn't sound like a trick. That sounds like more work. I need
No.
a hack. I need something that's
No.
going to be less work for
John
me.
and I iron every single day.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
For all of our kids. Yeah, we've always ironed like that, so that's important. But one of our hacks that we did over the last 2 years that works really well is each of our kids is responsible, and this works if you have a lot of kids, but I don't think it would work otherwise, but every one of our kids is responsible for a different day for the house. So Monday is Grace, Tuesday is Shane, Wednesday is Kason, and they have to do all the dishes for the full day from the morning till night.
Wow.
So they do them in the morning before school, they do them for dinner that night. They have to do their laundry on that day, which means wash, fold, and put away. And we've done this consistently for a long time, and it actually works really, really well. That's their day. They own it. They have to clean the kitchen. They know that that's their day. And if they're not home for that day, they have to pick a sibling to swap with
Okay.
to take care of their responsibilities. And it actually has worked very well. It's been a nice, consistent pattern. It's not a changing expectation. They have other chores that kind of rotate here and there, but that's their day to be responsible for the house. So it works good. Everybody does it except for Ford, the baby.
What
Everyone
age did you
engaged.
start that at?
Well, we started
for
that
your
a couple
youngest?
years ago. So I think Levi was probably 7.
Wow.
But our kids have a next level of independence. I mean, they load the dishwasher. They
And
run
the
their
work ethic on your
they
kids is
run,
like-
they do their own laundry. They know how to do wash and dry and everything. So it's good. It's helpful. I think that they're very responsible in that way. But we have to stay way ahead of all of the pieces. If we fall behind even just a little bit,
Drowning.
We're drowning. Yeah.
Oh my. All right. So off kids for a minute. This is off topic from what we were talking about, but since you're both work on a church staff, and a lot of people that listen to this podcast are either on other church staff somewhere or pastors somewhere else, and so, or just like part of our HPC family, what are common misconceptions about being on a church staff? Like, you know that people always come up to us and they're
funny.
like, oh, you do that? Oh, or you don't do that? I always thought that the church staff does such and such or doesn't do such and such. What are things that you feel like you've approached people on, or when people have addressed you or asked, what are common misconceptions about being on a church staff?
Ooh. I think the biggest one that I think, like right off the bat, is that we just hang out and have fun all the time. That we are just doing this, we're just chatting and brainstorming and laughing
But
and
now we're
drinking
giving away our
coffee.
secrets, Lori, because here we are laughing and
I
drinking.
know,
No, we're not
we
drinking
are. This
coffee,
is it,
but-
the one little
Yeah.
bit for the day, for the week, for...
That's funny. I remember a couple of years ago, someone called the church phone and they were like, if anybody's sitting around at the church, could you send them over to do this?
Yeah,
to go move somebody.
Oh, yeah. We were like,
yeah.
sitting around.
Whoever's sitting around at the church.
Sitting around. I don't think anybody's sitting around.
So I think people walk in and they see us on our computers and,
Yes.
you know, we're
Be like, "You must
drinking
be
a
on
coffee
Facebook."
or whatever, and they think we're all just like
Sitting in Starbucks.
relaxing,
like,
just
hanging
like
out.
hanging out, scrolling Instagram.
Oh, my.
But the reality is, like, I would love to just like post how many steps we all get in a
I
day
know.
in this building, the amount of running here, there, and everywhere. Yes, we're talking and we're counseling people, and we are collaborating and like getting ideas and stuff like that. But there's a lot of just like heavy, hard
Totally.
work and production and like stuff that
And I think
happens.
what's interesting about being on a church staff too, that's different for another job, or for the most part. I know that's not the case just in churches, but the emotional piece that's connected to everything, because it feels like everything has like an emotional and spiritual component on top of like whatever you're doing. That's a practical task. Like
Yeah.
some things that you're doing just need to get done.
Yep.
But you're always walking around and trying to be cautious and careful and sensitive around all the different things attached to that. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you could have a million things on your list to do, and you know, hey, I'm going to be counseling with people for 2 hours in the afternoon, and I have a certain like to-do list thing that I need to get done.
Yeah.
That day, you could be mentally there of your to-do list, and you could walk by somebody on their way to a small group or a Bible study who then leaves that as like has hurt feelings because either you weren't happy, you weren't engaging, you didn't ask how their loss of something, they lost their job 2 weeks ago and you never commented on it. I think for me, some of the challenges have been those kind of expectations where people, and obviously there's a ton of just super gracious, loving, like people, church family people. But I think sometimes walking that balance of feeling quote unquote on, when you're sometimes just somewhere else, or you're caught up with the fact that your kids have called your cell phone like 100 times from your house that day, and you're trying to balance their needs and thinking about picking up a kid's birthday gift for such and such, and you're going to do this drive and that drive out here and get this one there for that time, and this one has a dentist appointment, and you're trying to go out your husband, and on top of like your regular work, which of course everybody experiences these kind of things. But I think the expectation of people that are on a church staff is like, you should be on, you should be always caring and noticing. And I think that's hard sometimes because I feel like I know our entire staff, I'd like to say really well. And I know everybody's heart is there. Yeah. And so it always like, I hate that. I hate that when there's this like misconceived perception that somebody like didn't love well or care well, and you're like, no, do you really know that person? Like you probably try to talk to them. So I can definitely see that. Like there's just a lot going on here.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like I have a big list. I feel like I could come up with a big list. No, I think that, I think number one, I think a lot of people on the outside, and I can see where this maybe misperception or misguidance comes from, but I think a lot of people think that people that work at larger churches, that it's a really high paying job. Yeah. And I think there's an assumption that everybody, because a church is larger, like I think if you saw like a really small church with like 20 people, you'd be like, oh, I bet that pastor is like really,
he must have another job too.
Yeah. I think that many people do not realize that most people that work on church staffs, just in general, any church, big church, small church, have a second job or have to work something else to be able to kind of make ends meet and make it work in ministry. And I think that that's just part of it, the world, but I don't think that's always the perception.
Yeah. I definitely don't think that's ideal. Some of our good friends, they listen sometimes, so I got to give them a shout out. Bethany and Micah Marshall. Micah had just posted recently this little clip of this guy saying like, I'm getting ready to like share the secrets of working at big church. And he goes into like, and it's like kind of this, what's it called? Bait, like clickbait kind of thing. Yeah. So people click on it because you're like, oh, like big church gossip big church kind secret. Of thing. And he goes into like telling like all these stories about big church pastors, and he's talking about all these like incredible things that they're doing that nobody would ever know that they're doing. And the gist of it that he gets to at the end is like, why don't you ever hear, like, why do we only hear about bad things about big churches and like all this kind of stuff, like it's all bad? And it's like, yeah, but how often do you hear that a plane landed safely? Yeah, it's right. Like, true. You never hear that a plane landed safely. Yeah. What you always hear about is when they crash. Right. And I think some of that like financial stuff is so tied up, that misconception is so tied up in that train of thought where it's like, it's always negative. Like people who work for a church, they must be, the money that they take is because they're stealing from people, or that's why they want to steal people's money and ask for money. It's because they want it for themselves. And you're like, does that happen? I'm sure that happens. Right. Does that happen in businesses? Of course that happens in businesses. All these things are people. So it doesn't mean that that's like the case everywhere you go. Like that's the common. It's like, no, that's the rare. That's why it makes news. That's why you hear about it.
I just think that, so many times people don't see maybe the church staff that have worked for free for 6 or 7 years. Totally. And then, have done all the same work for zero pay, or the church staff that take a check and then write the check back over to the church. Like there's so many different situations. And I think sometimes you can see a large church staff and have a perception that, oh, wow, they must have a lot of money if they're paying all of these people. And I think that that's not always the case. Everyone's in a different place. I know. Financially.
I know. And that's always a bummer to me because you hear good things and you hear bad things. And I remember like some kind of like bad feedback coming back. Like after, it was like one year we sent a Christmas card out and the church staff was on it and somebody had to like say something negative about like where's the money coming from to pay all those people? And you're like, okay, you don't even know who's working for free in this picture.
Right.
Or the people who are being paid like stipend to do like tons of hours, and P.S. you actually don't even serve here.
Right.
So, you know, like that whole mindset, it's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard.
So being on a church staff is interesting. It has a ton of pros and it has some challenges. At any time, it's like you could be in a really intense counseling session and you could walk out and be like, I have to go clean the bathroom because somebody pooped on the floor.
Yep.
So you just don't know what your day is going to be in. You don't actually know how to dress ever because it could be anything. You could be moving furniture, or you could be like cleaning dust, or you could be setting up classrooms, or
being asked to be on a podcast, or do like you're like I wore my like painting clothes today, and someone important walks in. You're like, this is sorry.
Yeah,
like need change of clothes somewhere, and you take it home with you. You know, there are some jobs like that, and the church staff job is definitely one of those jobs. There's no like, that's one thing we always have to be cautious of is boundaries and all of that for our families to protect ourselves. But so
that was number 3 on my list.
What was number 3?
Boundaries. I think
boundaries. That's
in regular traditional work jobs, you go home and you're like, I'm not on duty, or you know, a lot of jobs in the world, especially today, are very much about protecting your time.
Yeah.
And having on time and off time and all of these things. And I think there is no end to things things that occur in people's lives, and tragedy and hardships and diagnosis and late night calls and emergencies. And those things are just part of ministry. And, you know, I think it's not uncommon that someone, you know, goes to teach a class or does a meeting, like one of our husbands or one of us, and it's a 2-hour class, but then there's needs and needs and needs, and now it's 4 hours. Lori's like got an extra big smile because she lives this life too.
Yes.
But there's, you know, needs and needs and needs, and so it is really hard to set boundaries, especially when it's legitimate things that you have to walk people through, and those seasons can be hard.
Right. It's true.
I think the tricky thing about that sometimes too is the expectation on people for like where there's an emergency and then the need is met, and then where there's like something that feels like an emergency to someone or feels like a crisis, but it's like, hey, we can set a meeting for that, or we'll talk about that next week.
Absolutely.
That can sometimes get tricky between having that boundary of like, yes, it comes home with us and we're available for when things come up, but also sometimes things can wait.
Yeah.
And trying to find that balance with people's expectations, but also with ourselves and our husbands and our families and ministry can sometimes be a tough thing to find a balance in.
Absolutely. And I think like the most crucial, like bottom line, if you're like going to get to the bottom of all of it, you know, I think that we have to maintain this heart for empathy for other people. And I think it's so easy to slip into this like, these are my expectations and you're not meeting them. And we can all do that. We do that we do that when we go to a restaurant and we sit down and we're like extremely thirsty and nobody's bringing water or dissatisfied with the service or whatever it is. I think if we can get back to that empathy piece where it's like, hey, let's consider the other person.
Yeah.
And try to see what they're thinking, going through, under, before we make assumptions. And we all need to practice that across the board. You know, I like sometimes I get frustrated with like, how come the church family isn't doing such and such, or how come nobody wants to be on this? Like, why is nobody like catching the vision to serve? Like, why? Yeah. And of course we have a fantastic serve team, but you know, but for the size of the church, when you have like 1,500 people coming on a Sunday, I can get frustrated sometimes. Like, how come people just want to come in on Sundays and not actually be part of what's going on here? Sometimes I have to readjust my thinking to where people are. Okay, they're in a season of loss. They just lost somebody. And so maybe they haven't gotten back on their feet, or hey, they went through some church hurt and they need to take some extra time while they're working through some of that. But yeah, it definitely goes both ways.
For sure.
Okay. So something that we have been talking about a lot lately is, and Kim actually brought this up before the podcast, is good soil. I kind of wanted to hear a little bit about your thoughts on this. I can't remember if we touched on it on a podcast recently. The staff over the summer really has been focusing on the biblical concept of reaping and sowing. And it's not just financial, it's with our time, with our families. You know, we did a podcast on kind of like stewarding well, and how are you stewarding like what the Lord's given you. So I kind of wanted to hear from you guys. We've talked a lot about the soil and good soil, and I love talking like gardening. So we've talked a lot about good soil and the seeds and the harvest and all of these kind of things. But anything that you feel like the Lord has shown you in this last season through this focus on reaping and sowing, and what has that looked like in your past or like different times in your life where maybe you saw it a certain way and now the Lord's kind of like given you new revelation for it, or where you used to see it in a certain area of your life, but now you've kind of applied it to a different space maybe?
I think I tend to be like a realist. Will is the ever optimist.
Her husband,
I'm the realist. And so when it comes to soil, when it comes to whether that's ministry, time, like how finances, what are we sowing into, I can, not critical necessarily, but just kind of analytical.
Yeah.
Like what's happening? What are we doing? What
Is this good soil?
Yes.
Show me the fruit before we're investing more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something that I feel like over the summer, the Lord has really been kind of challenging my faith, where I'm like, I want to see the fruit. I don't just want to see the little seedlings. I want to see like the full blown tree that's been around for a long time. That's got
You're like, now
lots
I know
of a
it's
harvest.
good soil.
Now I feel like I'm good to jump in.
Yeah.
And really just allowing the Lord to kind of grow my discernment and challenge my faith to be able to kind of take that step sooner. So that's something for me, like the fruit has always been the fruits of the Spirit for me.
Yeah.
So I'm looking like in people, in ministries, in opportunities, like where is that the fruits of the Spirit? And the Lord's just kind of been opening my eyes to what that can look like, how that can sometimes look different than I want it to look. And just really trusting Him and not trusting my own like perception and analytics and how it like logically makes sense, but just really being able to step out in faith.
Absolutely. I think that's really good. And I think what's great about it too, I would say all three of us are married to similar personality. I know people hate the Enneagram, but I think they're all like sevens. I mean, John's like an 8-wing 7.
Very fun people.
They're just
Very
fun people.
Yes.
And they're all in. They're like very optimistic, enthusiastic, all of those things. And I think what can be hard sometimes when you do err on like more the analytical, you are quote unquote the dream crusher.
Yes.
You know, and so I think when it comes to sowing and reaping, like the sowing part of that, when you sow, you have to have faith that you're going to be reaping.
Yeah.
And you don't always see that part. You might not see the reaping part for a long time. So you're just like, okay, I'm going to be faithful to sow and not be judgmental about where you're sowing and all those things. And I think we do, as wives, bring a level of discernment, a different level of discernment, different insight. There's importance in both those roles. I think there's also like some sort of like comfort in knowing that like, hey, it might not be where I would have first like gone to, but like, I think the honoring of your husband that you do, like the Lord sees that and blesses it. So sometimes even if it's like a big crash and burn, the Lord like honors your attitude in how you treat your husband. Are you respecting, disrespecting, all of those things? And I remember, this is a terrible story, and I don't know, I think we told it on here maybe early on, but there was this time where Zach really wanted this vehicle. And we had only been married maybe 5 years.
Yeah, a couple years. It was right after the moped. It was after the moped.
It was after the moped.
Yeah.
Okay. So that maybe would have been like 2011. I was pregnant when he bought the moped.
Yeah.
For me. He bought that for me, which was really thoughtful.
With a new baby.
I was pregnant and I was thinking, why would you buy me a moped to drive around on when I now have I will have 2 babies that are under 13 months old. Okay.
But you got a helmet. It had a cute helmet with it.
not so
That
practical.
car seat attachment.
So after he drove that around for a couple months, he decided that we needed something more practical. And he found on eBay the car of his dreams, the Defender of his dreams. He's always wanted a Defender. It was the perfect one. And he found it. And he was like, this is it. And I remember being like, oh, Lord. Okay. At that time, it was $8,500. And I was like, I don't know how we can do this. Okay, we're going to go kick a loan out because you couldn't get a car loan for it. You had to take a personal loan, which has like higher interest. We didn't have the cash for it. We might have had cash for a portion of it. But turns out this car was in the Netherlands.
Oh my gosh.
And he bought an $8,500 car from the Netherlands. And he had talked to the people on the phone, and they talked about the shipping schedule, all this stuff. We had to pay an extra like $600 or $700 for the shipping. The shipping portion you had to pay, it was like dock fees almost, or like harbor fees or something when it gets into New York City. So you have to prepay all of these things. So it wasn't just the $8,500.
He was so excited.
He was so excited. So this vehicle, apparently, what we were told is that it got to this shipping yard and they couldn't ship it. And there's something about the engine, that the certain type of engine you can't have in the United States.
Oh my gosh.
We don't really know the truth about any of this story.
Still
To this day.
don't know the truth.
What we found out when we had to figure out what to do with this vehicle now, because it was purchased, and they said, oh, well, just keep it. We can take it back to the lot, blah, 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 blah. We found the Netherlands Teen Challenge. So we got a hold of Netherlands Teen Challenge, and they drove, I don't know,
Well, you didn't
several
say you
hours.
couldn't get your money back. That was part of the issue.
No, that was it. Teen Challenge came and picked it up.
Oh my gosh.
So apparently it was a real vehicle, but did the owners know that it could never actually have been shipped out of the country? It's very possible.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was like over $9,000 when we just got married, that we had 2 little kids.
Yep.
Now that was money for a vehicle. So now we had no other car.
Oh my gosh.
And it was very hard. We paid on it. I think we had a 5-year note. So we were paying payments on a car that we never had.
Oh my gosh.
For years. And I remember biting my tongue and just being like, I wanted to be like, I told you so bad. And I didn't. Did I make some smart comments probably here and there? Probably. Do we still to this day joke about the fact that we owned a Defender in the Netherlands? Yes, we do.
Oh my gosh.
But I look back on that and I'm so glad, like looking back now when it's not about money anymore, and it's not, the Lord always provides everything that we need. And you're like looking back and I'm like, man, I'm so glad in that season where I was like really upset and probably cried over it a couple times that I didn't like degrade my husband in it.
Yeah.
And I like to think that the Lord like looked and was like, okay, like, did I handle it perfectly? No.
Right.
I'm sure I didn't say everything perfectly. In my heart, I'm sure I had too much anger, but I'm grateful that I can look back and be like, hey, like even in the midst of losing thousands of dollars, okay, Lord, like you gave me somehow the grace and the patience to handle that and be like honoring
I think that's
amidst it.
For like our husbands are all similar. Like they jump and then like, oh wait, is there a place to land? In marriage, to be a safe place or safe person for them to fail with, in front of, like around, is such a huge thing because he's always challenging me in that faith, in that like optimism and hope and all these things. And if I crushed that in him, if I was like just this person that did degrade when something goes wrong, then our marriage, our family would be lacking that, because that's hard for me. It doesn't come naturally for me. So my job to like create that safe place for him to hope and fail and hope again and fail again is like preserving our marriage and the culture that the Lord has like created in our family through him.
Absolutely. And look what our kids see with that kind of stuff too. You know, like, hey, it's okay for you to try stuff and bomb it or try it and succeed. And it's all like, it's all a safe place for that.
Absolutely.
And somewhere in the Netherlands, there's a missionary that's telling a really great story about how they were seeking the Lord for a vehicle and they were praying for a vehicle and provision. And the next thing they know, they're driving a Defender.
I mean, hashtag seed sown.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's really funny. All right, Kim, we never got to you with the sowing and the reaping. Anything you want or feel like the Lord's like showing you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like the soil piece, you know, after hearing parables of soil for years and years through church and growing up in church, I feel like I never could really identify with a farmer in sowing and reaping. And then I feel like in this season of thinking about the soil in so many different ways, you know, because our lives never have depended on a harvest. And so I think when you're engaged in soil where you depend on it in that way as a farmer does.
Like practically, yeah.
Practically, it means a lot more than it does when you just hear sowing and reaping and farms and soil. And there's so many
And the seed was
stories.
thrown into
And
the
seed-
rocky soil.
I'm
and
like,
the
I don't
seed
get
was thrown
it.
into the thorny
I
soil.
don't get it. But for some reason this season, and maybe it's because we're older and we do have gardens and we do understand soil maybe a little bit better and producing and fruit and all of those things, but seeing soil through a different lens and how important it is that that soil is healthy. And I think in that book that you were referring to that we were reading, it talks about, so often giving to things that are not healthy soil or that are not growing, but you think that it's almost like a due diligence to do that, to give to those places out of guilt but really assessing what you're pouring into, whether it's relationships or whether it's things that are fruitful or not fruitful. I think taking a nice evaluation is really important.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about the health of the soil in so many different areas, and it becomes a little bit more real than thinking about it through maybe the lens of a farmer,
Right.
It starts to really hit home. And I think that maybe we see it through the lens of finances, but it's really not.
Right.
There's so much more that it impacts. So
I know. I thought that's so good that you just brought up growing up in church. And all three of us grew up in church. And I know, Laura, your story is a little bit different with the style of churches and all of that. But I do think that that's like one thing that hit me too was through reading that most recent book that the staff read. It's called Breaking the Spirit of Poverty. And that was that Mark Pfeiffer. And I think I mentioned it again on the podcast recently. But anyway, we were just reading that book. And there is a whole section on that, sowing into not good soil. And like Kim said, I totally agree with that. Like there were so many years when you're like, as long as you're giving, as long as you're serving, as long as you're like doing, or helping whoever needs help.
Right.
And giving to whoever reaches out for help and answering the phone every time it rings. Like that's what the Lord sees and that's what the Lord blesses as long as you're serving. And it's not true.
No.
Yeah.
When we see the parable of the servants, of the three servants who get the different amounts of talents, what they were charged with was to multiply those talents. And you can't multiply talents by just throwing talents into the wind or giving them away for people to pilfer or whatever, like just to get rid of or waste. The same things can happen with our time. The same things can happen with our finances. And just that crucial part of, hey, I have one life to steward. I have one family to steward. I have bank accounts to steward. I have a certain amount of time to steward. And how do we like do that well into good soil? And that's hard. Like, can you look at the church that you're giving to and say like, hey, like this place is good soil. Like it's thriving. This is a healthy place where I know like my seed's going to be multiplied when I serve, when I give. A place for my family, because really you bringing your kids to a church is you sowing seed somewhere and being like, hey, I'm going to plant my kids here and trust that the harvest is going to be plentiful.
Right.
So many times we get so sentimental.
Consistently.
Oh, consistently. Yeah. Not once or twice.
Yeah.
Not once a month.
Yeah. The farmer has to take care of their garden
Totally.
on a daily, weekly basis. It's not something you can just go out once a month and be like, oh, is that growing?
Yeah.
It even if it's in good soil, if you're not tending it,
Yeah.
it doesn't,
Well, and if you're not weeding something, the weeds come up and choke out the things that are growing. I think that we get so sentimental. And I think one thing that's hard with like the Church of America today is that so many people are in their churches based on sentimental reasons. And so their kids are being, unfortunately, like starved spiritually. They're being starved spiritually. They're pouring finances into something there's no life and it's not growing. And it's so sad to me. And I think that I honor like the commitment piece. I honor the like, hey, like we're committed to something. We're not just going to give up on something. But what's the Lord saying about it? Is the Lord saying, yes, this is the soil you need to be sowing. Yes, this is the best thing that you as a parent can do for your children in this season. Yes, this is the best thing that your finances, this money that I've given you, this is exactly how I want you to steward it into this place right now. Like you have to be able to go to sleep at night and put your head on your pillow and say, I believe that I'm honoring the Lord with my family, my finances, and my time.
And I think sometimes the Lord calls you to a place where it doesn't look like there's fruit to keep investing, to keep sowing. But I think more often, or at least pretty often, we get stuck in like our routine. Like, oh, well, this is just where I go and this is how I give and this is what I do. And it's too much effort. It's too hard or it takes momentum to
Make a
switch
change.
directions. So we're just going to stay here, and we're being faithful, and we're checking the boxes, and we're following the rules, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, quote
Right.
unquote.
Right.
And we get lazy about listening to the Lord's leading.
Yeah.
Because we're just comfortable. And I think that's where, especially with soil, sometimes you're sowing in a place and it was good soil, and then it becomes not good soil. And we're like, well, this was working for a while, so we're going to keep doing that. But listening to the Lord and allowing Him to direct us to where we're sowing, how we're tending, so that we are producing fruit rather than just throwing seeds out into an empty parking lot.
Right. Right. It's good. Right.
it's
Anything
good.
else from anybody before we close? I know we went long. I was like, oh man, we could keep going, make it 2 podcasts. I don't know. It'd be a lot of us talking. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here today. This is so fun. We'll have
so
to do it
fun.
again. And Our House friends and family, thanks for tuning in today. Let's pray before we close, and then we'll see you next Friday on Our House. All right. Father, we thank you so much for this time together, God. We thank you for friendship. We thank you for all the busyness of life that you've given us. And we pray that we honor it, God, that we steward it well, that we honor what you've given us, that we are diligent to plant into good soil, Father, that we are not just blindly throwing out our seeds, Father, but that we're seeking you for direction and how we use and contribute and serve and all the different pieces of that, Lord. And we thank you for this next season that we're coming up on, God, as we step into September and this fall, Father, that you'll just give us wisdom for this next season and how to best honor you with everything that we say and do, and how we raise our kids and steward our marriages, and God, just create opportunities for church family all over this country, Lord, just to pour into other people's lives, to get into community where they can be encouraged and edified and also held accountable, and also edify one another, Lord. So we just believe that that's what you want for your church, Lord, that you've called us to edify one another and to bear the burdens of one another. So help us to find those communities if we're looking, Lord, and friendships if we're looking, that you will just open those doors. Help us to be faithful to the people you've called us to be faithful to, and honor those and serve those you've called us to serve and honor, Lord. We love you and we thank you for this time together. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Our House friends and family, we'll see you next Friday here on Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Well, isn't that special?